Chapter 21. Scott always wore a wedding ring, and when I asked him why, he insisted it was the ring of his dead fiancée, and he could not take it off unless it was cut off. I played with that ring while he slept, and tried desperately to take it off myself. It was legitimately stuck on there, but his reasons for wearing it, his dead fiancée, the story never quite sat well with me. With my turning 18, I was finally allowed to go to the city, in New Jersey. He'd spoken often of his home and of this girl he lived with, Jen. I still don't know who she was. He claimed she was the daughter of a friend of his. She may have been his daughter, but she was 5 years younger than me, and there was one rule. Under no circumstances was she to know about my existence. His reasons for that rule changed every time he reminded me of the rule. For my 18th birthday, he took me to New York. 3 hours and 2 forced blowjobs later, we were pulling up to his house in a small, dingy neighborhood in Jersey. While he fumbled with his keys at the door, we were greeted by a cat. "Hey, Bruno," he said, and I snapped at attention. "Bruno?" "Yeah, that's Bruno." His keys jingled. "I thought Bruno was the name of your neighbor's cat at the mansion." "It is." "So you have 2 neighbors with 2 cats who greet you?" I asked. He didn't look up. "Yeah. And both are named Bruno." He never should have taught me logic. "Yeah." He pushed the door open and I looked at Bruno, who also happened to be a Russian blue, just like the mansion Bruno, who he had been describing to me for 2 years. I followed him inside while doing my best to ignore the sudden desire to throw up. Scott had said he lived in a mansion. For 3 years he described this $5 million palace to me. He said he had a Persian cat named Cassie. He said he had a lot of things, that the house he took me to instead of the mansion wasn't his. He was house-sitting for a friend and had to live there for 2 months. Instead of the mansion and the life he had talked about for 3 years, he took me to a small, it was a dump. 5 years of cat hair was caked on all the furniture. The floors were unswept and warped from water damage. The whole upstairs was a junk closet, cluttered with boxes of paper, clothes, and filth. Donation garages looked cleaner, and all over the place, no matter where I turned, evidence that a wife lived there screamed in my face. Bras hung on the back of chairs. Prescription meds dated only 2 weeks out for a woman named Rose were everywhere. His clothes and hers covered every inch of the floor. Letters, piles of letters, and open junk mail sat on the coffee table, the counter, the piano, and every available surface. He poured me a glass of wine and went to work on dinner. I chugged the first glass and shuffled through the letters. My blood went cold at a name, Mr. and Mrs. Scott White. Within 30 minutes, I'd drunk the entire bottle of Merlot, and I hate Merlot. We settled down on the unmade bed, and we put in the movie Airplane. The camera scanned the terminal, and a man and a woman began talking over the loudspeakers. I stared at the bottom of my wine glass. The man and the woman started arguing. Scott started laughing. I gripped the glass hard. I wanted to break it while a single line from the movie cut deep a wound that had not even begun to heal. "If this is about the abortion, you're going to bring that up again?" Scott laughed while I felt the words cut me like a blunt blade. I looked at the DD bra lying on the floor. The bed shook with his laughter. "I'm going to get more wine," I slurred. I hadn't made it 20 minutes into the movie when a brush shot aroused him and my body responded. Like clockwork, my body reacted, and he fucked me right there in his wife's bed while I stared at her medication. I decided to do what any enraged, broken female would do who had been lied to. I tested him. The next day, I scattered 30 random sticky notes all over his house. Sticky notes tucked away behind sheet music, hidden in the fridge. Random "I love you" scribbled and scattered on every orifice. I even scratched it into the 2-year-old soap scum ring around the tub. "What is this?" he screamed. I played naive. "What?" "This!" I stared at my note of endearment clenched in his fist. "What?" I smiled innocently. "It's a love note." "Where are they?" "They?" "Are there more?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Damn, I wish I could lie." "How many?" 30. "Damn! Lie already." "Get them." I swear he was going to punch me. "Now!" "But I thought they would be sweet." I tried to recover the last of my brilliant plan. "You could find them after I was gone, when you miss me." "You know Jen Bizets! I can't have her seeing these." "And why not? She's not your daughter. She doesn't even live here. She lives at the mansion." "Okay," I obeyed, rounded up my plan, and scrubbed the love note off the tub. An hour later, I was back in his car heading home, my head shoved onto his dick once more. That summer passed with me buried in my music studies. "When will you move me down to Jersey?" "Not now. We have some renovations to be done on the mansion, but soon." Mansion? I no longer believed that lie. "It's been a month," I reminded him. "When?" "Soon." You'd think I'd quit asking. I never did. My music education continued. I read up on Copland and Beethoven, Liszt and Bernstein. I studied music from Gregorian chant and counterpoint. I composed countless compositions in the two-part, three-part counterpoint. I studied Bach and Brahms, Mozart. I ran into the Romantic period and fell hard for Beethoven. I studied his style, his motifs, his life, his music. I studied Liszt to learn more. And then I fell into Puccini with such a passion. That man knew me. He knew my heart. What sounds I would need, and he wrote them. Nearly a century before I was born, Puccini wrote composition that was only meant for me. I moved on to Rococo and Baroque. I flourished in ballad writing, folk pieces, and improvisation. Once I had the theory and the modulation under my belt, after 3 years, I could sit at a piano and play the hurt in my head. I would lose myself in ballad writing. I completed the courses in harmony and entered the world of Schoenberg and jazz. I studied the augmented seventh and began on the 13th. I studied music history and theory on up to the 1960s, when the Beatles made their sing and stopped just before the British invasion. I was careful to never cross over from classical music, Bernstein, Copland, and Philip Glass, Scott's orders. I toggled my music composition with theology, history, and completed my studies on philosophy. I worked harder than ever on logic. I still had not won a single argument against Scott, but that didn't mean I didn't try. After the abortion, I started to notice things I hadn't seen before. I knew he was married. I knew he was lying to me, but I couldn't prove any of it. This was important. I had to prove it. My piano performance was sharp. I had mastered Schumann at concert level. I ate, drank, and slept to slow practice with the metronome. I was working on the Beethoven waltzes when I watched my friends all move away and scattered around the country. Elena left for the larger cities and went on to Europe to study art in the Louvre. And Hosea? September came, and with it a dark cold that filled me. There was no bus, no classes. There was simply nothing but a need, and it had one name: Hosea. The urge hit me hard and sudden. I had to speak to him again. I didn't even have his number. I called Elena, who had it. Elena, please have Hosea call me. I need to speak with him. I couldn't say why. I only needed him. I would have that same conversation with her for 6 months. I pined while I wrote my music. I practiced, and my ballads turned bitter. A macabre ensconced me, and I let it. I had a need. It was simple. Hosea. I spoke to Scott. He'd drill me in algebra. I'd read up on my music history. I placed my call in to Elena and begged her to pass my message on to Hosea. I would proceed with logic and philosophy. Winter came, and I drew in. Bitterness chilled my heart, and I welcomed it. The scars left by the abortion had maimed my heart. My father and Sean became more vile than ever now that I was no longer in high school. Tribble was my only solace. January brought in February's cold, and my phone rang. Hello? Hi, it's Hosea. You wanted to speak to me? And all at once, the ice chipped away from my heart, and there was life for me again. We talked all night long. We talked about everything and nothing, all while we spoke of that summer. Our friendship, school, the staircase where we spent endless hours engaged in a debate we would carry with us to the art room. We listened to the other breathe. We talked about school. We simply relished the other's company. I swear the sun rose, the dawn spilled in through my window, and I heard a rooster crow that morning. It's morning, I said. It is. I often wondered how long we would speak if ever we were given the chance without interruption, I said. Silence. Hosea? Yes. I love you. Silence. I don't know what to say, he replied after a moment. I smiled. How could I not? And say nothing? And I will say I love you until you do know what to say. Silence. Hosea? Yes? I love you. That call was cut short when I heard screaming in the background, followed by, "You talked the whole damn night! Get the fuck off the phone!" Gotta go, he muttered, and click. Another call.